Generally, this looks like just a mini version of the rigid fiberglass chimney cleaning kits that you have to get up on the roof and add one piece at a time and scrub it. This is very similar, but the brush is not as tough, it's not as stiff, but it doesn't really need to be because of the way that this works. This is bendy, and so it can go around corners if you do it right. The trick with these is to keep it spinning and never spin it in reverse. I like to use duct tape on the joins, and that way if something accidentally does come undone, I can still pull it out even if it becomes disconnected. If by chance these become disconnected, you're not going to be able to get it out without getting up on the roof and using an act of God to get it out of your crawl space or whatever part of the roof it grows through, and then you'll have to take your whole chimney apart in order to get it out. In order to get it around tight corners, like it can go around a square angle, it can go down a square angle. The trick is just to keep it slowly spinning as you push, and if you keep it slowly spinning as you push, then the bristles themselves will wind it up into that square angle. Okay, so obviously it has cooled down. The fan is not going anymore, so I can move that. Now, every stove is going to be different in the way that you clean it. The bends, the angles in the chimney are going to be different. This is just how I clean my stove. There's a lot of nooks and crannies to get to because it is a cooking stove. This is the tool that came with the stove. And most of this is just fly ash, not creosote. There is a hole right there that is part of the dampering system. Now you can't see it because my hand's there. Right there. There's a damper right there. It would make sense to put it through there, but don't put it through there because you have more chimney back under there that needs to be cleaned as well. So the place that we have to do it from is that hole right there. I just want to make sure that there at the back of the stove, back there is the hole that all of the soot and creosote comes down in the chimney. It's a very small hole in the back there through here. I want to make sure that this is as clear as possible before we start dumping more down so that I don't get an obstruction of creosote there at the bottom. It's very important. This fits directly in here. Don't tighten it up too hard or else the screws, the threads on this will get just deformed. But you just tighten it the same way you would any kind of bit. Tighten it in. And you just feed them in one at a time. Again, if you have it spinning, as you push it in, it works to get around those bends. Also, it works really good if you have some kind of plastic or something to put down because the creosote does get on everything. But it just works really straightforward, just like any other drill accessory. You see how smooth that was? It went right in. I turn it back to the spot where I know the next hole is. Okay, so I think you saw that. So I get my next one, put it on. Really the only hard part to do is these two little openings because they are so little and you kind of have to baby them through. clothes. I keep touching my clothes. You're not going to be able to touch anything else if you touch your clothes. And what inhibits it from going into a small hole is the actual hard plastic in the middle, not the bristles. There we go. All right, back to that corner again. Yeah, that one feels a lot better. That's the bigger one. And instead of banging off the sides of the chimneys, it's actually just directly rubbing against the chimneys, which is what you want. You don't want to miss a spot because your little brush is too small. Okay, at this point, I'm just going to reach in here and make sure we're not getting a creosote buildup, which it doesn't look like. So this way I can tell how much of the creosote was in the stove itself and how much was in the chimney, because I had this space so clean. So I know that all this creosote came from the chimney. You can definitely feel a difference when it goes through the different types of chimney. The single wall versus the double wall. One has a more solid feel than the other. And makes more noise. When it's in the house, the noise is kind of muffled, so when you break out onto the chimney that's on the roof, it starts to be more rattly. You'll know that you've reached the chimney because it will give kind of a resistance, the same way that it did every time it transitioned between the different types, the different double wall versus single wall versus roof versus the box that surrounds the ceiling. It all kind of, you feel that hesitation as you hit it. And so I've hit it. I'm feeling hesitation. Okay, just go up and watch. Just holler at me if you see movement.
I do, and it's making sound like it's moving the top.
Okay, good deal. You're done. So, at this point, I'm going to take off the pieces of tape one at a time. If you're going to use your drill to undo them, just be super, super careful that the only thing that's getting undone is the one in your hand. So you need to like clamp on to the two pieces like this when you put it in reverse. There you go. And usually it'll just like, it's just a really quick pop. You're not having to do it for very long. And it'll come right out. And then I hook on to the next one and I go up and down a little bit more. Make sure you turn it the right way. So yeah, I really don't know if one brand is better than the next, but this one was $30. Some of the others were like $80 and $90, and you can see it does a fine job. if you have a professional chimney cleaner come and do your chimney, it's a minimum of 120 bucks, at least in our area. That's per chimney. So we have 2 chimneys. It cost us $240 to have that done. So 30 bucks, it's gonna last me for years. I feel like that's a pretty good deal. At those transitions between the stove, the chimney, and any other join, that's where it gives some hesitation. So you kind of have to slow down and put more pressure on it and less spin for just a second while it works its way through. Now this may be more work than most of you want to go to, and our rigid chimney cleaning set is only 3 pieces. And so if you don't have a problem with heights, and you don't have a problem with slick roofs, and you don't have a problem with blizzards, then maybe this seems like overkill to you. But for me, emotionally, even though I can do the other, I've done the other, I don't want to go out in the cold weather. I want to be able to do it from my warm house. I want to be able to still keep an eye on my kids because I'm at home with my children. And my husband can do it up on the roof, but he isn't always here when it needs to be done. And he doesn't love doing it either. It's not his favorite job. I don't mind doing it this way, and so that's why I do it this way, is because it doesn't give me emotional issues, it doesn't make me feel scared, and it does a good job. So you can see there's a lot of attention to detail once it gets down to the base of the stove, because you can get a firebomb there. All it takes is a coal dropping in there and it just goes up, and then it's stuck in your stove and your stove becomes a chimney fire. So it's all doable. You just have to have a little bit of attention to detail. The year that happened, the year that we didn't realize that we had actually compacted creosote into the back of the stove, that was the year that we had the fire that actually warped and ruined the back of our stove. We had to have it refabricated, and we have a whole new back on the back of the stove because it happened, and it was terrifying because you can't get the creosote out. You can take wood out of the firebox and take it outside in the snow and just let it sit and cool down, but you can't get creosote out of the stove once it's created that kind of bomb. In the ash box, that creosote is perfectly fine. Even if coal drops into it, nothing's going to happen. The reason is it's not going to be able to form a blowtorch effect. There's not enough air, there's not enough heat down in these ashes to create that. So in the firebox, the creosote is fine. The creosote is also fine here in the stove itself, around the stove itself, because again, airflow is the limiting factor. The heat is the limiting factor. The hot point on the stove is going to be as it enters the chimney and goes up the chimney. It's a very hot point. Here in the stove, around the stove, it doesn't get that hot, and there isn't that much airflow to create those effects. So it's in your chimney as it's coming out of the stove that you have the biggest problems. And I am a mess. A mess. Creosote stains everything, so make sure to wash your hands really good, wipe down your floor really well, because if it gets on your feet, it'll get on your carpet. I hope this was helpful. I don't remember the name of this tool, but I'll put it in the description below in my Amazon affiliate link, so it helps our channel a little bit if you purchase through that link. I'm sure any of the others are great, but I haven't tried the others, and it was 1/3 the cost of the others that I saw on there. I think it really kind of depends on how long your chimney is. Some of those more expensive kits had more rods. This one went to 18 feet. So thanks for coming in. Make sure to go check out any other videos that you're interested in our channel, and we'll talk to you later. Now, the way that I do this is, it's not cheating, it's just cool. This is the little fan that when the stove is going, it blows. And so all I do is I put it on the edge here, and it blows towards what needs to dry over here. And then everything up here and everything here is dried from just heat rising. So it is possible to overcook things in your oven.
This one was a cheesecake.
This one was a cheesecake, and now it looks more like a brownie. Well, no, actually, it's perfect.
It looks burnt.
It's not. It's perfect.
Well, it looked like it was like burnt.
It did look like it was burnt, but it's not.
It smells like s'mores. Yeah.
It does smell like s'mores. It looks delicious. Okay, we're going to let it cool down, and then once it's cooler, we'll put it in the fridge.